This is the Big Deal Podcast, brought to you empowered by New Covenant Baptist Church in Albertville, Alabama. And on this podcast, we're asking the question, what's the big deal about all things Bible, theology, and culture related? I'm Justin.
And I'm Brad.
Welcome to the Big Deal. Brad, how you been?
Good.
Yeah, life's good.
Yeah.
Did you do something fun for the 4th of July?
Did I? Yes.
Did you grill meat?
I did grill meat. I actually smoked ribs.
Were they as good as mine?
No.
Really?
My seal, I have a big green egg. I'm not joking around about grilling. I'm a serious boy about it.
You're a serious boy.
Yeah, but my the seal on it is getting old.
So you're leaking smoke?
No, it was pulling air.
Oh.
So it got to be difficult to keep it under about 280.
Yeah.
So my ribs cooked faster than I like.
Mm-hmm.
They were still delicious.
Yeah.
Make no mistake.
Yeah.
But I had to pull them earlier than normal.
Yeah.
I find that they're a little tougher if you don't get that slower smoke on it.
Yep. Need the time for that bark to develop.
Yeah, a little bit, but you just don't want it to happen fast.
No.
That's
the whole point, smoking meat. You want it slow and
you
slow.
want that fragrant aroma all day.
Yep.
So, yeah, they were done in like 5 hours, and typically you want to do like 6.
6, 7, yeah.
Yeah. But if I'd have left them on there, then we'd had beef jerky ribs.
Yep.
So sometimes you just got to make a call.
Gotta make that call.
Yeah.
We went to the lake. It was super fun. Rode jet skis.
Ooh.
Sister-in-law's place. Yep.
That's the sort of thing that we deploy for.
Yeah.
So that you can have those days.
That's right. Yeah. Hey, freedom. Absolutely,
Freedom.
man.
Sounds like freedom.
Yeah, I texted all. Did you see that text I sent all y'all?
No.
I sent to all of our military guys in our church. I was like,
yeah.
I was like, without you guys, I'd be cleaning Putin's toilets.
Hey, when Amy said, that's my wife, she said, I think the neighbors and everybody bought a lot of fireworks. I said, sound like freedom.
Yeah, smell.
Oh, it smelled like freedom.
It smells like freedom.
Oh,
yeah.
I love it.
Gunpowder.
Now, I'll tell you who hates it is every dog.
Dogs hate it, man.
And people are like, y'all should stop shooting fireworks. My dogs hate it. I'm like, well, when a dog picks up an M4 and protects me from the bad guys,
that's right.
We'll discuss the firework thing.
That's right. Super fun. I love the 4th of July.
We just lost 2 listeners. Like, I don't care about my dog.
Yeah.
Hate this guy.
Archer rode on the jet ski. I don't know if it was the first time, but it was the first time he could appreciate it. And I'm holding him, riding slow, one-handed and stuff. He loved it, man.
Oh, yeah.
He was like, fast, Daddy, fast. So we went fast. Yeah.
I mowed the yard.
Yeah, you did?
I did.
I mowed my grass in 2 weeks.
Wear a shirt.
Freedom.
Yeah, I'm out in the country. Y'all don't have to see the lighthouse. I don't catch rays. I reflect them. But, mowed my yard. Drank as many Dr. Peppers as I wanted.
Freedom.
Smoked ribs. I ran around being American all day.
What a great, fun day, man.
Oh, man.
Well, everyone, welcome to the Big Deal Podcast. We're doing this series on the narrative of Scripture, the narrative arc of Scripture, and we're going to camp out on Genesis 1 for a minute. We talked about creation last week, and we kind of talked about creation from this 30,000-foot view of just the problems that people have when the baggage they bring to Genesis 1 for their history and all this kind of stuff, and we're going to kind of begin a little bit with that, but we're going to try to get into the nuts and bolts of the passage of Genesis 1 this week and deal with some of the stuff in the text, the words, and what it actually says. So that's how we're going to start. I want to start, though, with kind of appreciating, dealing with the interpretive history of Genesis 1. What has been said about this passage of Scripture, this chapter of the Bible over the years, and what are the big influences on when we open up Genesis 1, what are the big influences that we have when we come to the table?
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think, Brett?
Modern people?
Yeah, modern people, like us. Yeah.
I think that the impact of the King James translation cannot be understated in what they decided to do in their translation, for one thing. So King James, Scofield Bible Commentary.
Oh, yeah.
Huge. Because you got to think in the early 1900s and stuff, when Scofield Bible came out, it was pretty much the first study Bible. King James and people didn't have a lot of access to. This is crazy, but like study materials.
Yeah, no,
or
that's right.
Books. There were no bookstores, especially in our rural areas.
Yep.
They didn't have the internet.
You had a Bible that had notes.
The Bible
in it
had
and stuff.
notes,
Yeah,
and they thought, well, these notes must be how it is, or else they wouldn't be in there, right?
that's right.
So I think it had a massive impact on even how it's read today. Mm-hmm. So I think the Schofield Bible, King James Bible, and I think those two things, oddly enough, really shade how we read Genesis today.
When you think about like the King James, what is it specifically about the King James translation that?
So
influenced
in
it?
Genesis 1:1, it says in the King James, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. And I would wager that's all any English speakers ever heard it say.
Oh, yeah, that's what Christian Standard Bible says.
Yes,
and
that's what
ESV
said.
Yeah.
But in Hebrew, it says that God creates the Hashemayim Ve'eth Haaretz.
Whoa,
goodness. That's for free for everybody. So, and the reason that's important is the word that King James translates heavens, Hashemayim, means sky.
Ah, yeah.
And Aretz is the importance of Aretz in the narrative of the Torah, of the Pentateuch, can't be understated.
What's the Pentateuch and Torah?
So Pentateuch and Torah means law, but it's not just the law. It's Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. So
Penta. Oh,
five.
yeah.
Penta means 5. So we have 5 tukes.
5 tukes.
Peregrine Tuke.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's
Books.
different kind.
Yeah.
5 books.
Yeah.
5 books. So Pentateuch or Torah is the 5 books. And this becomes obvious when I start talking about when I say promised land. Mm-hmm. I think everybody would immediately pick up that's a big deal in the early part of the Bible.
That's a Bible thing.
Well, the word for land is aretz. And so in Hebrew, it looks like in the beginning, God created the sky and the land.
Yeah. What's up there and what's down here?
What's up there, what's down here.
Yeah.
And so when you translate aretz, earth, you make that decision. In our brain, we don't think land. We think globe.
Yep. We think the spinny globe in kindergarten.
And so that's not wrong.
Yep.
But what it is, so heavens and earth or sky and land serve as this is an English tricky thing. It's called a merism. It's when you use 2 antonyms.
We're breaking out the big words.
Yes, but it actually is important.
That's an important thing too. Yeah.
So when you got 2 opposite words, you put them together, and we do this a lot. People don't think about it. To make something an inclusive whole. So sky and land or heaven and earth is like saying, I lost my favorite pen, and I looked high and low. And if I say I looked high and low, you as an English speaker know I mean what?
Everything.
I'm looking everywhere.
Right? High and low and everything in between.
Yep. I thought that guy stole my money, and I searched him head to toe.
Yeah.
That means I checked everywhere, right?
Yep.
So when the Bible says that in the beginning God creates the sky and land, he means he made it all. That's what it means.
The top to the bottom.
To the bottom.
Everything in between. Yeah.
Yeah. And so the reason it's important to me is we have a different picture immediately in our brains when you read heaven and earth. Because, like, when you tell somebody in English heavens, I'm not even sure they think outer space anymore.
No, they think probably spiritual.
Yeah, spiritual area.
Yeah, spiritual area. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's just
where God lives.
Yes, that's just the sort of meaning creep that happens in all languages. There's a difference, subtle sometimes, but there's differences in what words mean from 1611 to 2024.
Yeah.
But once you get it in there, heavens and earth, it sounds beautiful.
Yep.
And we get what it means. And so nobody's going to put in a modern translation, in the beginning, God created the sky and the land.
That's right. Yeah, but who would do that with the weight of King James Version?
Now, that's what I mean when I say
the memorization. Yeah,
right.
Yeah,
because
we memorized in Bible school. I memorized years ago. God created the heavens and the earth.
Yes.
And you don't mess with that too much. It's the same deal with like John 3:16. Some passages like that.
Although they dared mess with it,
they dared.
I have a bone to pick about that one.
Yeah. And so it's the influence. The King
Don't
James,
take out the word begotten.
Do you like the King James Bible version?
Yes.
Yeah.
For what?
I just wanted to know.
Okay.
I just want to see if you can make an enemy or two. Yeah.
I think that the language and is majestic. Like heavens and earth sounds way better than sky and land.
Yeah.
And there are places where the translation of the King James is more artful.
Oh, yeah.
Because they weren't concerned in 1611 with writing it on an 8th grade level. Mm-hmm. And so some of the language is beautiful. The downfall of the King James is that it is a college level piece of literature now.
It might be beyond college.
It may
now.
be. So people don't know what therewith means or wherefore.
Diverse manners.
Like when someone says in King James, "Wherefore art thou, Romeo?"
Mm-hmm. Yep.
People think wherefore means where are you at? Mm-hmm. Wherefore means why.
Yeah.
So when Juliet says, "Wherefore art thou, Romeo?" she's not asking where he is. She's saying, why did you have to be Romeo? Mm-hmm. And so people miss that stuff in the King James. And I don't care what you say. Modern readers have difficulty approaching the King James. And there are manuscript issues that King James translators were not aware of because they couldn't be.
Yeah, they didn't have them.
They didn't have them.
Yeah.
And so I think accessibility to the language is the con. It's a big one. And just from a general...
yeah. But it was an incredible Bible for a long time.
Yeah, and it still can be in places. I still think no one will ever defeat the 23rd Psalm from King James.
Oh, I know, man. It is one of the best poems of all humanity.
For sure.
No doubt.
So there's some gorgeous
English rendition is what you
There's some gorgeous things about the King James that maybe I'm nostalgic or sentimental about, but I don't think so.
That's not a bad thing.
I don't think so because, look, who has come close to that kind of translation?
Yeah.
Nobody is reading I love the NIV and the HCSB and the CSB and all those works. I think they're great.
Yeah.
But nobody is reading the NIV Psalm 23 and going, that is better than the King James. Like nobody says that.
And they're so practical these days. Like and I'm glad they're supposed to be practical in a way, but like they're not often shooting for beauty because in our day and age, accuracy is so vital.
Yes. And I think the King James guys were trying to be vital, but I think they were too. Their translation tools were not as good as ours.
Yeah. We know more Greek and Hebrew
than they did.
Yep.
Also in the second verse, I got off.
We were talking about Genesis 1.
We got heavens and earth, and then you have, and the earth was formless and void.
Yeah.
Again, that's the aretz, the land. And formless and void, when you hear the words formless and void, what pops in your brain?
Nothingness.
But that's not what
Zero.
It means.
Yeah.
It really means a barren wasteland.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean nothing was there. It means it was inhospitable to life.
Yeah.
Like a desert.
One of the words is literally desert.
Yes.
It's the word for desert and wasteland.
Tovu ve bohu.
There you go. Do you do the hard B? I thought it was V.
It depends.
Okay, yeah.
On it's sort of like Augustine.
That's nerdy stuff. Don't worry about that. Yeah.
Or Augustine.
Augustine or Augustine.
I say it as my dumb head thinks it.
Yeah. So there's these iconic. We should say iconic translations involved in it that really affect our perception of the text. Most of the time in the Bible, translation is just not a big issue.
No.
It's like the translations are so good and well done. It's like it should never call into question.
In fact, I've never read a modern translation, and by modern I mean anything since like 1968, that I would say that's wrong.
That's right.
That's not what we're looking at.
Because it's not wrong.
I can look at stuff and say decisions were made that I might not agree with.
Yeah.
But it's not wrong. Heavens and earth is not wrong.
It's not wrong.
It's not wrong.
It's just that when people today think heaven, they don't think sky. Whereas even like a couple hundred years ago in English, if you say the heavens, people are looking up.
Stars.
They're thinking stars, sky, clouds. where birds fly around on. You know?
Exactly. We think something a little different, and I like the idea of sky and land, and and that the land was a barren wasteland. Just to kind of get your mind thinking in a little different direction, but also it has that flavor of this is an ancient thing we're talking about here. Like the ancient peoples would say, in the beginning, God created the sky and the land was a barren wasteland.
Yeah.
Like this is a story.
Dude, that's exactly how they probably told the story.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they're like, ooh, and the kids are like, barren wasteland?
Yeah.
Nothing could live there. That's what was in their brain.
Yeah.
It's like, and then what happened?
And then what happened, Papa?
Yeah. And then what happened? And the darkness was over the surface of the deep waters. You're like, what?
I'm hanging on your words right now, man.
And
That was great.
The Ruach, the breath of God, hovered over the waters. That's beautiful.
It is. It really is.
It's
Yeah.
like a.
So we're not talking about wrong and right.
Oh, in King James, it doesn't say hovered.
What does it say in
It's
King James?
moving.
Moving.
But the picture in Hebrew is a brooding hen
Okay.
that was like brooding, like God was hovering over the waters, like caring for it, like in the sculpting act. And so it's hard to capture that.
Yeah, and moved upon the face of the water.
That's what it says in King
It's
James.
so beautiful, honestly.
Yeah, but the idea of the spirit or breath of God hovering like a mother hen hovers over something over the deep waters before he says, and then out of that he says, "Let there be light." But there was light. It's it's amazing. Yeah.
So some of the things like it's not an issue necessarily with King James. It's an issue with how English has changed since 1611 when it was written.
Yes.
It's like you think earth and heavens and earth, and even in 1611 beyond, up until a couple hundred years ago, they were thinking heavens was sky. They had that was part of their vocabulary for the word heavens. We just don't have that today. And that's why it's not a barrier. It's just something to say when you read it. It's something to mention. Oh, and by the way, and I think actually, no, okay. So here's a funny thing. The CSB has a little note.
Oh, yeah.
It says
say sky and land?
No, it doesn't. I wish it did.
Yeah.
It says the universe. It says in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, and you got the little A right there. And it says the universe.
The universe.
And I think that's them trying to say
it's everything.
Everything in between. Yeah. And so they try to add something every once in a while. They'll add something like an little explanatory translation kind of help thing.
Yeah.
But okay, so KJV, Old King Jimmy, King James Version is very influential. And then you have like...
And I think will be until English is not spoken.
Yeah, it is. It will. That's 100% true. Yeah. Then you have like the interpretive history, and what we mean by this, like how have people read this over the
before King James,
way before King James, like people have been reading the Bible for a long time before English.
English.
What has been said about this chapter, and what has stuck around? What have we forgotten? There's lots of those things, right?
Yeah. And
so let's go back as early as we can go, as at least we can think, is like Augustine.
Yeah.
And what did Augustine say about it?
So one of the things is as we read this Genesis account, we've got the creation story. We've got God creates the light and he creates the darkness and he separates them, and then he separates the waters. He's moving them around somehow from the top to bottom.
Yeah.
And we can get into that in a minute. Mm-hmm. And then after he makes the dry land, he makes the vegetation sprout. I'm getting to Augustine here.
Yeah.
So vegetation sprouts, right? That's verse 12.
Yeah.
We've got vegetation growing. And then something weird happens, brother.
What happens?
He makes a sun.
Before the plants?
After
the plants?
So we've got green plants. If you read the passage in verse 14 and 15 and 16.
Yeah.
So we've got... verse 12, the earth or the land brought forth vegetation, plants yielding seed after their kind. Verse 16, the next day God made two great lights, the greater light to govern the day and the lesser light to govern the night.
How did he do that? How were plants alive without a sun?
Well, that's a great question. And so what happened in Augustine addresses this.
Yeah.
Because there are things in he was fighting against dudes that he actually converted from.
When was he around?
I think 400.
300 to 400, right? 400? Yeah, right around in there, AD. So this is like a couple hundred years after Jesus.
Yeah.
So early church still.
Early.
Yeah, it's still early on.
And the Manichaeans, he was converted from Manichaean. It was basically a religion that taught that, as I recall, everything revolved around light and darkness.
Yeah.
In a spiritual sort of way. And
like Platonic kind of stuff.
They used this passage to mock Christians, to say, hey, the Bible says here that the shrubs came before the sun.
Yeah.
And Christians were saying, yeah, and they were trying to figure out ways to make the grass work before the sun. Mm-hmm. And Augustine's response was, quit doing that. That's not how we're supposed to be reading Genesis.
Yeah. I got a little quote here.
Go read it? Yeah, I want you.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Augustine gets frustrated. Okay, he gets a little peeved about this.
And look,
these things.
All your mean emails and texts to Augustine.
Yeah, Saint Augustine.
Yeah.
So he says, this is he wrote a little book called The Literal Reading of Genesis. One, I think, is what it's called, or the literal reading of Genesis. Let me look up the source. Yeah, literal meaning of Genesis. Okay, this is his little book pamphlet on it.
So you're telling me in 385 ish,
yeah,
they're already arguing over the literal meaning.
They literally are,
literally,
and he says,
yes,
he is a literal reader.
Yeah,
and he's looking at these other people that are saying their literal readings, like what you mean by literal is not what you. It's like what's the guy, the Princess Bride quote?
Inconceivable.
That word does not.
That
mean
word
what,
you keep using. Yeah. I do not think it means what you think it means.
That's right.
That's what Augustine says.
He's saying that about the word literal. He says usually, even a non-Christian knows something about the earth, the heavens, and the other elements of this world, about the motion and orbit of the stars, and even their size and relative positions, about the predictable eclipses of the sun and moon, the cycles of the years and seasons, about the kind of animals, shrubs, stone, and so forth. And this knowledge he holds to as being certain from reason and experience. Now it is a disgraceful and dangerous thing for an infidel, someone who's not a Christian, to hear a Christian, presumably giving the meaning of Holy Scripture, talking nonsense on these topics. And we should take all means to prevent such an embarrassing situation in which people show up vast ignorance in a Christian and laugh it to scorn. The shame is not so much that an ignorant individual is derided, but that people outside the household of faith think our sacred writers held such positions, and to the great loss of those for whose salvation we toil, the writers of our Scripture are criticized and rejected as unlearned men. Reckless and incompetent expounders of Holy Scripture bring untold trouble and sorrow on their wiser brethren when they are caught in one of their mischievous false opinions or taken to task by these who are not bound by the authority of our sacred books. For then, to defend their utterly foolish and obviously untrue statements, they will try to call upon Holy Scripture for proof and even recite from memory many passages which they think support their position, although they understand neither what they say nor the things about which they make assertion.
Oh, man.
That's a blistering...
Here's the deal. I am thankful for Augustine.
Yeah.
That he did not live in the age of the internet. Because he would have been like, hold the phone.
Yeah, he would have.
Somebody's wrong. He would have nuked the whole place.
Yeah.
Dude, he couldn't have took it.
That's so funny.
Yeah. He probably read like 2 letters. He's like, what is going on?
Yeah. And so they're arguing over this stuff early on.
300.
Yeah. And Augustine's a powerhouse. He's like probably the most important theologian before the Reformation. You agree?
Easily.
Outside of like the writers of Scripture.
Most important theologian for the Reformation.
Yeah.
Without doubt.
Yeah. And he's a top 3. No, of all time.
He might be the GOAT.
Yeah, he might be. His theology is like what most of all of our theology is all based on, right? So he's an important dude. You don't really mess with him too much, and he's already having to like argue about this stuff
already.
John Calvin. We like John Calvin. He's a nice guy. Well, kind of sometimes, but he was
like Baptist.
He did not like Baptist, but we liked him. We love you, John Calvin, in heaven.
Yeah.
Even though you didn't like us,
he's probably embarrassed now.
He probably is. He probably loves us now.
Oh, he's rooting for us.
Yeah, he talks about, he has the same situation. He's arguing about, and he has this quote saying that God is accommodating the people of like who read the scriptures with just something they understand. It's basically what he's saying.
Calvin said when God speaks through his word, he lisps. And what he meant by lisp is not the same thing we mean now. It doesn't mean, it means that baby talk.
Yeah.
That he talked to, like when you get a baby and you're like, oh, you're so cute. That's what the Bible is. He's trying to he's
goo goo guying us.
Yes,
oh my goodness, that is so funny.
We're not smart enough to get it.
That's true.
He's accommodating.
It's accommodating. The script. We've talked about this very first week, that the scriptures in and of themselves is an accommodation. It is God condescending to us, coming down to us to speak to us on our level. We don't understand lots of things about God. Like, we can't.
We will
beyond us.
Never.
Yeah, like
we will always grow in his knowledge, but we will never max out.
Yeah,
we will never be like, we get everything, because then we would have to be eternal. So we're constantly, as C.S. Lewis says, further up and further in.
Oh, there we go. Yeah. The Last Battle. That's a good quote right there. Yeah. All right. And then you got Charles Spurgeon.
Yeah, he's
a Baptist guy.
Oh, everybody loves Charles Spurgeon.
Yeah.
Until they find out what Charles believes.
Yeah.
Because he was a Calvinist.
He was a Calvinist.
Who believed in an old earth.
An old earth? Not 6,000 years?
He's like, this sucker looks old.
Yeah.
We figured it out.
And this is like
in his day, they were finding dinosaur bones and stuff.
Yeah,
like,
late 1800s, mid 1800s. Is that when he was around?
Late 1800s.
Yeah, late 1800s. Right.
Oh, wait,
150 years ago. Let's look at that.
Yeah.
I have the internet.
I know that Southern white dudes hated him.
Is that right?
Facts. He was radically abolitionist.
No. Yeah. So he was. Oh yeah, I bet then.
Yeah.
He's born 1834, died 1892. Okay. So yeah, through the.
But his ministry spanned that entire time, because he started preaching when he was like 15.
Yeah, he was young. Yeah, preached every day, man. Charles Spurgeon, old earth, man, like probably fussing at people about being old earth.
Well, he didn't have to.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, this is the differences of opinion.
Of ages. Yeah.
And here's where it kind of comes down to. I think it's like some people have very dogmatic views about the age of the earth and how things happen in Genesis 1, literal days, whatever. And I think that it was widely held as like the only view for all of time until evolution came around, right?
Yeah, but that's not the case.
And it's not the case. So you have Augustine saying that the formation of the earth is not what you think it is sometimes. No. Like it doesn't match. It's accommodating.
He was the guy. I think Augustine, whatever.
I don't know which one I say.
I'd say both.
Yeah.
I think his view was the world came into being like that.
It is. He did. He said God created everything at the same time.
He says 7 days is too long.
Yep.
Because it all. But okay, let's get back to that a little bit.
Yeah.
Because it's important. But to finish the thought, creation story has not always been the place of controversy. So if you think of the Bible like a bridge to heaven. In Genesis, the start, and Revelation, the end. During history, different places in Scripture become the pressure point for argument.
Yep.
And sometimes the creation story is it. Sometimes it's not.
Yeah.
I'm talking about in-house discussion. Another place you'll find it pop up apologetically is what's going on in the Gospels when we have, quote, contradictory accounts of seeming same events, like one demons or two or whatever, stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So there's different places that start bearing the weight of controversy. And modern day would be like, gosh, I say modern day, 20 years ago and still today, like role of men and women. What's going on?
Gender
pastors are men, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Which was not a controversy forever.
No, yeah.
So different times, different things.
Yeah.
And so sometimes it's controversial, sometimes it's not. Spurgeon didn't have to put up with a lot of...
This has not been a controversial thing for most of history.
It became around the Scopes monkey trial.
Oh, yeah.
And the...
Y'all remember Scopes monkey trial?
Yeah.
Little piece of history.
It was... the rise of evolutionary theory became a competing narrative for creation.
Yeah.
And that is when people really started pushing Genesis 1 to not pushing it, I mean like digging it to say, No,
Yeah.
it can't be this. So
Yeah.
they sort of, when you get up on the horse after you fell off on one
Yeah.
side and you start falling off on the other side.
Pendulum.
Yeah, the
Swinging.
pendulum swings.
It's like, they're saying, probably about 100 years ago, this stuff is really gaining steam, especially as it's approaching into schools and whatnot. Basically, it's a naturalist worldview that there's no, everything is random chance. Like evolution is a series of random, it's godless is what it is. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah.
It's like a godless cosmology.
Something came from nothing.
Yep.
Order comes from chaos.
Yep.
It's actually kind of absurd.
It is, yeah, without God in the mix at all. And so people kind of start tamping their feet on Genesis 1.
Yeah.
And pendulum swinging a little harder than their predecessors had come before him.
And also, it creates a crisis in Christianity as far as like, what do we do with Genesis 1? Because they are seeing we start learning more about the universe, right? And
Yeah.
dinosaur bones are popping up.
Yeah.
And so they're like, how do we deal with this? And so if you look at Genesis 1, when it says in the beginning God creates the sky and the land, or the heavens and the earth, and you understand that as God made it then. Mm-hmm. And then he's sort of walking us through stuff after that. One of the things they started saying was, hey, there's a lot in this story we don't know. Like, when did Satan fall?
Yeah.
Where's that in the Bible?
Yeah.
It's not in there. When did where are the dinosaurs? Like, it seemed like a big deal.
Yeah, why don't we
what
get
was your favorite
the Tyrannosaurus
thing when you were 10 years
Rex? Oh,
old?
man, dinosaurs.
I remember being an
100%.
archaeologist.
I watched Jurassic Park when I was like 5 years old.
Yeah.
Which I cannot imagine showing Evie.
Yeah.
Evie's 6. You just turned 6. I cannot imagine her watching Jurassic Park.
She'd be terrified.
It's a horror movie nearly.
Yeah, it is.
And I watched it. I loved
Enraptured.
it. Enraptured.
I want to find dinosaur bones. I want them.
I wanted to
even
be
if
an
they get
archaeologist for years. Yeah.
I did too.
Yeah.
I watched Indiana Jones. I wanted to be an archaeologist. I found out he's actually a thief.
Paleontologist.
He's a thief.
Yeah, he was a thief, wasn't he? But he's going to give it to a museum.
He was.
This belongs in a museum.
Belongs to a museum, not to the people that made it.
Yeah. And definitely not to the Nazis.
Yeah, we got to do more.
Yeah.
So yeah, they start seeing these things, and they're like, when did this stuff happen? When did the dinosaurs come around?
Yeah.
When did Satan fall? There's all kinds of history that we're digging up all over the world that looks really old.
Mm-hmm.
And where is it in the Genesis account? They would say, okay, this was called the gap theory.
Oh, yeah.
Gap in knowledge,
That's
gap
a
in
long.
history.
Yeah.
So Genesis 1:1, everything's made. And then something happened, Genesis 1 and 2, and God sort of had to fix the world. Like there was an extinction. Maybe there were angels running around, and that's when the fall happened, and the dinosaurs were here, and the world got obliterated, and the land was barren, and he recreated. So like verse 2 is like
That's why it was a wasteland.
yeah, it
or
was a
something.
wasteland.
Yeah.
There is no evidence in the text that that's what happened.
Yeah, we don't know that's true.
But it's a possibility.
It's like, it's a theory that, it's why it's called the gap theory. It's like that people have kind of come up like to explain the missing pieces, because there is, for the gap, there's a gap in our knowledge.
Yes.
We just don't, the Bible hasn't told us these things.
All we
The
know-
Bible doesn't talk about dinosaurs.
All we know is that the accuser shows up, and we don't know where. The accuser shows up. We don't know where he came from.
Yep. That's right.
Yeah, we don't know why he's doing that.
When that snake shows up, we don't have a clue. It doesn't tell you you don't even find out about the identity of the snake.
Hey,
oh my goodness.
I know for all we know, if you're just reading it, no spoilers, it is a literal talking serpent who is wiser than all the other animals that God made.
Here's the kicker. You don't really find out the identity until Revelation is written.
Pretty much.
Pretty much.
Oh, yeah. Well, they guessed it.
Yeah.
The early.
I think
Jews-
Romans,
Yeah.
you might get it in Romans.
Yeah. But
Romans came before.
there's not a lot of info on it.
Yeah.
No. In the Bible.
Yeah.
Not much.
Yeah, I mean, in the scriptures, it's just like there's nothing there. So early on, at least. So all that to say, where were we? We were talking about
The gap.
the gap. Yeah.
Mine's
Oh
the
yeah.
gap.
People are trying to they're trying to figure out to fill in their own
blanks.
gaps and have this gap theory, right?
But what's problematic about it is one person's speculation, which is fine.
Yeah.
Like if I'm talking to you, I'm like, man, maybe a bunch of stuff went down between verse 1 and 2.
Yeah.
You're like, maybe so. You're like, you should publish that. That's a neat thought. And so you write it, and it makes its way into something called the Schofield Bible or something.
Yeah.
And then everybody reads it, and it becomes how it is.
Speculation can take on a life of its own.
Absolutely.
And it turns into a whole like dogmatic worldview, and that has happened at several levels with this.
Many times.
Yeah.
Galileo Galilei. How was his name? Galileo, what was the first name?
I think
Yeah. You know, he's like, hey, we're not the center of the universe.
Galilee, yeah.
Galileo Galilei. He says, hey, the world is actually flying around the sun.
Yeah.
And they're like, what?
Yeah.
The Bible says that we're the center of the universe.
The spherical Earth itself is like, when that came about, and you have the corners of the Earth and all this kind of stuff.
If you send me an email saying that the Earth is flat,
It's not flat.
it ain't.
It's not flat.
You can read some Hebrew poetry. It makes it sound like it's flat.
You can read a lot of ancient sources. A lot of them believed it was flat.
Thought it's flat.
That's okay.
Yeah,
But
they were.
the Bible doesn't. It's not trying to tell you. the world.
But
Yeah.
the spherical nature of the Earth was known in ancient times also.
Yeah.
Because there were Greek dudes that accurately measured the circumference of the Earth based on shadows falling from towers.
Yeah.
Like those guys were
There's like
super geniuses.
sometimes people think that like knowledge is this just up trajectory of up and to
It's
the
not
right.
like that at all.
It's not. Man, there's like knowledge gained, knowledge lost, knowledge gained, knowledge lost over
Just
and over.
because they
again.
know something in one place doesn't mean they know it in another.
That's right.
And there's still competing authorities and knowledge.
Especially in the ancient world, man, where it's like information was lost because a king decided to conquer, and it's gone. The Library of Alexandria, smoke, flame.
Yeah, and one of the interesting things that King James did in Genesis 1:17, your modern translations won't do this. It'll say God placed the stars or the lights in the expanse of the heavens. But in King James it says this little pesky word,
What is that pesky word?
firmament.
Like what you do to get wine?
No, that's ferment.
Oh, what's the firmament?
Firmament was it means expanse. It can mean expanse.
Yeah.
But it can also mean like a thin layer.
Yeah.
And so people today, often who argue for a Younger's position, will say, see here, there was a thin layer. God put a bubble on the world, and it was high pressure oxygen zone, and it was like a, what do you call them things they put the athletes in?
Hyperbaric chamber.
Hyperbaric chamber here. And so that's why everybody lived a long time, because it was saturated with oxygen and it was high pressure, and there was a thin layer of water or beaten metal or something.
That's why the dinosaurs were so big.
Yes, because they didn't die. They lived a long, long time. They kept growing forever and ever and ever. And so that's what it is.
Yeah.
And to all Augustine's credit, I will quote him. That's nonsense. Nonsense.
It's nonsense.
It's nonsense. If you could do that, why hasn't somebody made a great big hyperbaric chamber? Well, just go in there and live till we're 900.
Yeah.
Or make a dinosaur.
Yep.
Like, just get you a crocodile.
Yep.
And according to this, he's not going to die. Just let him live in there and see if he gets to be a T-Rex.
Yep. And so it's like some of these views pop up. They start speculation. They just take on a life of their own.
But they're trying to fit dinosaurs in.
It's like they're trying to fix the Bible. And that's a bad game to get into.
Yeah.
Like, you don't need to fix the Bible.
No, they're trying to fix their interpretation of the Bible.
Yeah.
When it doesn't look right with what we see and observe.
Yeah.
And creation is the second book.
That's right.
It is written by God
Yep.
to demonstrate God and his purposes.
Yep.
So Scripture is specific revelation of what God is up to, the why of what he made.
Yep.
But we can read the other book too. Mm-hmm. It was made by God to tell us about God.
Yeah. So let's look at some of the details in the text. So you got the first day is light and darkness.
Mm-hmm. After the creation of everything.
Yeah, that's right.
Unless it's a chapter identifier.
My professors in seminary thought it was like a chapter identifier. This is God made everything above and below. Here's everything. and now the nuts and bolts. That's what they say. You know, that's fine. So you got the God said, "Let there be light." It's good. You have this kind of like, thing.
Everything's good.
Everything is good. I mean, he doesn't make nothing bad.
Yes.
And that happens 6 times, doesn't it? Right? He has 6 days where he's creating. The second day,
And in their defense, he says, and there was an evening and there was a morning.
Yep.
Day 2.
yep, day 1 day, 2 day. What do you think is the light in the darkness? Is that you think that's time or something?
I have not a clue.
It's just light and dark.
Light and dark.
Yeah, some people talk about that being time and stuff.
Yeah, maybe.
I don't know.
But see, again,
There's no sun.
we're trying to fill in gaps here.
Yep.
We don't know.
It might not be doing exactly what we think it's doing. What we're looking for, I guess, is what I could say there.
He didn't have to make the dark, just the light.
Yeah,
But he
that's right.
separates them.
He separates
I don't know
them.
what
Yep.
that even
Yep.
means.
I don't know.
He's making stuff.
Yeah, that's why I guess people think of it as time
Maybe.
because it's like day and night.
Yeah.
That's what happens every day for us.
Well,
yeah.
we've got
24
3
hours.
days before we have a sun.
Yeah, I know. That's the problematic stuff that Calvin and
is.
Augustine are looking
Like,
at. and
hey,
stuff.
let's
Yeah.
not get carried away here,
Yeah.
people. Yeah, because how do you have an evening and a morning
Yeah.
if you have no sun in the sky?
Yeah. And then in chapter 2, you have like humans before plants. If you think they're like a
to me.
1-to-1. Yeah. So the second day, he's moving the waters around, right?
Yeah.
The water under the sky is gathered in one place. Or he's making the expanse. He's separating it, the waters above, the waters below. That's,
And he moves off. It seems like from this description that the earth is a big old water ball.
it does. Yeah.
And, he takes some of the water off of it, puts it in the sky somehow, and the dry land appears. When
Why
he
do you
moves
think
it
that
over.
makes sense to ancient people?
I don't think it makes sense to anybody.
Well,
I don't know
what
what
comes out of the sky?
What of rain?
Yeah, rain.
Right.
Water
It's
does.
all about how he's making clouds and skies,
Yeah.
or maybe
It's like water comes from the sky. Like
yeah.
you're expecting that.
I just thought you
know?
meant like, what's the mechanism?
Oh,
of action? I'm like, I don't know.
oh, no, no.
Scooping it out with a
It's
god ladle.
It just makes sense, right? It's like this is where water comes from.
Yeah.
It comes from the sky. They never see water come from anywhere else
Yeah.
except for the sky, and then we dig down deep. That's why
pops
there's
out.
waters below.
Yeah.
Right? And they dig down deep and build a well.
But even that is tough to interpret. Like when he says water below, does it mean water below that water in the sky?
Yeah.
Or does it mean water below the ground? And people have took it both
Oh,
ways.
yeah. Who knows? Yeah.
So
We just all we got's that, and then he's going to take the water under the sky, and it's going to be gathered into one place, and let the dry land appear. Okay, so the land that's when we're getting dry land, in this text for the first time, right?
Mm-hmm.
And on that same day, you get all the vegetation. Let the earth produce vegetation, seed-bearing plants and fruit and trees on the earth. And here's one funny thing about this. This is God, in how the language works. He doesn't do the God created plants. The earth produces it. That's just a kind of a funny thing. If you read carefully, he said, "Let the earth produce the vegetation," and then 12, the earth produced the vegetation. Right?
you keep using that word earth.
The land.
Yeah.
I know. It's right.
It's
You're right.
ingrained.
It's the land.
Yeah, it's the land.
Yeah. So
And look, I'm not saying. So one of my professors, Dr. Selhammer, says that the purpose of this creation is talking about God's preparation of the promised land,
Yeah.
or the Garden of Eden. Like, it's not the creation of the whole happens in verse 1, and then the subsequent creation is the description of the preparation of the Garden of Eden. It's the land.
yeah.
I don't know that that's true, but I do know that Aretz, or land, is central to the narrative.
You can't get away from it.
No,
it's everywhere.
Adam and Eve are going to be placed in this land that's wildly located where Canaan is.
Yeah.
Because we know it's between the rivers, right?
Yeah.
We'll get to that. But
Yeah.
every time you read earth in the Old Testament, you can, in your mind, do a brain switch and say land,
Yeah.
and see if it colors your
Especially
perception.
within the Pentateuch.
Yes.
The first 5 books of the Bible. All right. And so you get the emergence of the land when it's covered in vegetation. The next day, the 5th day, we get the swarming things, so the stuff that lives in the water and stuff that lives in the sky, right?
Yeah.
And so,
Swarming things.
yeah, that's what.
And are they good?
Yeah, everything's good.
Is that when the mosquitoes were made?
Yep.
And they're good? Hate them.
I guess God.
Ticks.
Yeah. Yep. Oh, I don't know about I don't
know if they.
what do ticks?
ticks-
I don't know how ticks count.
Ticking me off.
They ticking me off. Yeah. And so they're multiplying, birds and fish. And then the sixth day, you get, again, let the earth produce living creatures. But this time it says God made them, right? In 7 verse 25. God made the wildlife of the earth according to their kinds, livestock, creatures that crawl on the ground according to their kinds. And God saw it was good. All right. So you get all the animals, that live on dry land. And then verse 26, you get a really important passage. One of the most important passages in Genesis, right?
I would say, perhaps, one of the most important verses in human history.
Yeah, no doubt.
Period. And I'm not being, what would be the dramatic?
Yeah.
This is the linchpin of the West.
I don't know any other way to see that. Yeah, I think you're right. It's the linchpin of all humanity. It says that's because this is when God makes humanity. It says, then God said, let us make man in our image according to our likeness. They will rule the fish of the sea, the birds of the sky, the livestock, the whole earth, and the creatures that crawl on the earth. So God created man in his own image. He created him in the image of God. He created them male and female. Now let's slow that down. All right. So man, what is he just talking about? Like men? Like the way me and you are men, not women.
Well, he says male and female.
Yeah, but in verse 26.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. He's talking about both.
Yep. So it's mankind, humankind, or something.
Mankind was made in the image of God.
Yep.
In His likeness.
So yep.
So I cannot imagine a more profound statement with regard to human origins or purpose or with regard to worship.
Yeah.
Because what is it that God from Exodus on forbids people to make?
Oh, images.
Images of what? Of God.
Of God.
They're forbidden.
That's right. The Ten Commandments is the second commandment, isn't it? Yeah.
It's not just don't make an image of a bird and worship it. It's don't make an image of God.
Yep.
If you read the Exodus account pretty closely, when Aaron makes the golden calf, he calls it Yahweh.
He does.
So he's trying to make an idol of God.
Oh, that's a bad idea.
An image.
Yep, he is.
But the first thing God does is make an image of himself.
Yep.
So a lot of times, and this is interesting too, like you think about this, what have you been taught the image of God means?
What is the image of God, Brad? What would you, that's got people got all sorts of stuff
I
on
would
that.
say, so I'm trying to say this as easily as I can. The image of God means we bear His reflection. We're supposed to be like God.
Supposed to look like Him.
We're like a mirror.
The image.
I think it's the best thing.
Yeah, mirror. I like that.
We're to mirror God. So whatever we do, people should think that's how God is. Mm-hmm. We're supposed to be revealing God to one another and to all of creation, whatever that means. My dog should think I'm like God.
Yeah.
But and you see this in Revelation way at the end when John is taken up into the heavenly places, wherever he is in heaven, and he runs into someone and he falls down to worship him.
Oh, yeah.
Why would John do that?
Yeah.
That dude looked like God.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, I'm not God, I'm one of your brothers.
Yeah.
The prophets, get up. But he looked like God to John.
Yeah.
And that's the purpose. And so here it says that he's been given authority, right? Let him have authority. Because part of God is authority.
Yeah.
And take care of the earth. God's a caretaker. And so all these things we're supposed to reflect in God. And the other reason it's so important is outside of Genesis and the Torah especially, I don't think anywhere else ever really gets into the image of God again.
The New Testament.
But a little New Testament. I mean, like Old Testament stuff. And this is where we get the idea of human rights.
Oh, yeah.
Human equality.
dignity.
dignity of life.
Yep.
That's why Christians argue that all people are people, no matter how large or small, no matter how smart or dumb.
Pro-life stuff. Yep.
Pro-life stuff. Is because every single person is an image bearer of the living God, and therefore is owed dignity.
Yeah,
And dogs don't have it,
that's right.
and cats don't have it.
Yep. So this reality of like the image of God, it like asks and answers the one of the big existential questions that people have, like, why did God make us? Like, why am I here? What's my purpose on earth?
Yeah.
That everyone wants to know. Like, even if you don't believe in a God, like you're an atheist, people still have that question, like, why am I here? What's my purpose? And they answer that in all sorts of ways. And the image of God answers that. Like, you are here to image him.
Yeah.
That's your purpose.
Yeah.
That's why God created you, was to reflect
See,
him.
God is infinite, right? He's infinite. No one person can be all things.
Yeah.
But together, as we work together to do things, as you work with other people, I mean, I know this has happened to you and probably everybody listening, that you've worked with someone that was exceptional in some way, and especially in a way you could never be. Like, whether it's athletic or brains or gifted.
I experienced that a lot.
A lot, right? And it makes you marvel. Like,
Yeah,
wow.
yeah.
And so together, the infinite God is showing us himself through, if we weren't sinful, we would see parts of God flash out of people that in his image.
Yeah, the like, pre-fall humans, like, it's a lot of times we, in the church, we talk about humans as being like so awful, right? We have total depravity. That's one of our doctrines, right? And it's true. We are
As
bad.
bad as we could be.
Yeah, we are bad.
But we're
And you only can really appreciate that in light of Genesis 1, like how we were created.
Yeah.
That it's not supposed to be like that.
No.
Like, we were created as, sub-rulers of the earth, like
We're supposed to be like Jesus.
royalty.
We should be like Jesus.
Yeah, we should.
Yeah.
He is the exact
He
image
is
of God.
The exact image.
Yeah.
He's the
Colossians
unshattered
1. Yeah.
image.
Yeah.
We're shattered. But this idea of everybody being, I'm going to say something here. The only places that outlawed slavery are places that believe this.
Yeah.
Image of God.
Yep.
Across humanity.
Yep.
So it leads people to say, how can we treat people this way if they're bearing the image of God? Mm-hmm. And so if you look at some of the awful things that happen in history, whether it be the transatlantic slave trade or whatever, you have to actively denigrate people as human beings in order to justify their treatment.
Yep.
You see this with the Nazis, with Jews. Everything goes back to Nazis, right? You see it transatlantic slave trade. You see it in...
you see how weird... There's like weird patriarchy kind of stuff sometimes. You ever heard of some of this stuff where, like, certain churches, they say that women aren't created in the image of God? You ever heard of this?
Yeah, because they're creating the image of man.
Yeah. They're not in the image of God. It's only men that are in the image of God.
That's
Same kind of thing.
I want to punch them.
Yeah. Women are too. It says right here in the text.
In the image of God.
Male and female.
Yeah, in the image of God, he made them. Yes. And so when you want to dominate someone and you want to treat them like animals, you have to start undermining this teaching. But people who stay true to it and believe that the image of God is sprinkled in all human beings, then not only do we take care of folks who don't look like us or talk like us, but people who may not have advantages of us. The poor.
The poor, the widows and the orphans.
The orphans, the folks who may not have the same mental acumen as us. Or, man, this is huge.
There's a reason that basically everywhere you go, you see hospitals, big hospitals, that there's a saint in front of all their names.
That's right.
Because they are Christian institutions.
I know.
The hospitals are created by people who love people.
Yeah.
It's true. So, image of God, it's reflecting God. It's responsibility and rule in looking like God. And this is why humans were created. This is why me and you were created. Some people, there are a lot of things that we do because we're here and because we are who we are. But that kind of dance around the idea of the image of God. Like some people say, like, why was I created? I was created to worship God. That's true.
Yeah.
Like, but that's not the answer in and of itself.
No, and worship's a tricky word.
Yeah.
You were created to enjoy God.
Yep. Yeah, because like sometimes when I hear people say that, it sounds like God needed someone to tell him how good he was.
It's not what I mean.
Like, or he was lonely or something.
Worship is the enjoyment of God.
Yep.
That's what it is.
Yep.
It is not a painful thing.
Yep.
It's like eating cookie two-step ice cream.
That's some good stuff.
I love cookie
Yeah.
two-step.
Yeah. So like, God didn't create humans because he was lonely. Like and he didn't create him because he needed us to do stuff. That's paganism.
Yeah, he created us. It sounds awful.
Yeah.
He created us because he said, I am so awesome. I would love to share this and show somebody how awesome.
It's sharing. That's what it is.
He's sharing himself.
And he shares his rule.
I'm going to make people, I'm going to make things that are able to comprehend my greatness. Now, if I said this, it would sound ridiculous.
Why?
Because I'm not God.
Because you're not God.
I'm not perfect.
Yep.
I'm not good. But God is all those things. He actually is good. So he says, I am so awesome and good, and love is good, and justice and kindness. I am going to make creatures that can comprehend it.
Yep.
And my goal is to show myself to them and them to enjoy it. And then they say to one another, oh, isn't that great? Isn't God great? Mm-hmm. And I'm going to make them taste buds and eyeballs, and they're going to see all this stuff, and I'm going to make a creation, because they're not going to be God. They're going to be like me, but for all eternity, I'm going to be showing them all my goodness.
Yep.
That's what it is. It's in sharing himself.
Sharing.
Yes, of himself.
The distortion, then there is a distortion of this that people say, and I hear it from atheists sometimes, kind of like, that God just wanted to hear compliments all the time. Like he's just like, he's vain. It's like vanity or something. And that's a distortion. That's not what we're saying.
No.
That would be it if we did it.
Yeah.
We're not, and we would be shooting above our pay grade. If I made people, if I created AI systems just to compliment me all the time, it's like, that is a vanity project.
It's true, but let me say this. Mm-hmm. If I tell my wife, I love you and you're absolutely gorgeous.
Mm-hmm. You're looking at me too much when you say that.
Did you get nervous?
Yeah, sweating over. Password. My shirt's a little weird, man.
Yeah, you need to clip that. Right there. Just clip that is the thing. But like, if I tell her that, that's not a forced moment of praise, and she surely didn't want me to say it as a vanity project.
That's right.
Right?
Yep.
I mean it.
Yep.
Right? And so, worship of God, true worship and enjoyment, is just seeing his goodness and going, that is awesome.
Yep.
Like
and you're enjoying it.
Love it.
You love it. It's incredible. And so,
I love justice.
Yeah.
We all love it.
Yep.
Because we're made in the image of God.
Yep.
It doesn't explain Rambo. If you can't understand, if you can't understand Rambo, why do people watch it?
Yeah.
Why do people watch any action adventure movie where the good guy wins?
Yep.
Or evil is triumphed over? Mm-hmm. Why do we have to have resolution in music from minor keys?
You don't.
You don't have to.
You don't have to.
But if you don't, you're going to go home sad.
Yeah, you might. I like to leave it. I like to leave it out there on the...
You just leave it in a minor key?
Minor or 4 or something, yeah.
But it asks for resolution.
It does, yeah. I don't know if that's a good example, but I know what you mean, Brad.
I'm right.
So, anyways,
Beethoven
image of God.
Would agree with me.
Yeah, Beethoven would agree with you, actually. Yeah. So, we have all humans have inherent dignity, value, worth because of this image of God. And then it goes on, talks about mankind, and I think there's one neat thing to talk about the word mankind in the Hebrew. It's Adam. It's Adam. Yes. In English, we'd say Adam.
Sneaky.
Yeah. In Hebrew, they do accents differently, so it's Adam.
Adam.
But the name Adam is
a little bit like land, Aretz.
Yep, it is.
They mean in earth or
like
land?
The first human
is named humankind.
Is named human. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's, I don't know, I guess maybe that actually makes sense, If I was the first human and my name was Justin, we'd probably be Justin beings, Justin kind.
Just in time.
Yeah, but that's what it is. But in Genesis 1, it seems to be just talking about all of humankind because it's plural, right? There's many of them created there. And in Genesis 2, it focuses down on just the one Adam. All right, so that's the image of God. Then you get to 28, and the humans receive a blessing. God blessed them, and God said to them, "Be fruitful, multiply, fill the earth, subdue it, rule the fish of the sea, the birds of the sky, and every creature that crawls on the earth." And also, God also said, "Look, I have given you every seed-bearing plant on the surface of the entire earth, and every of the land, and surface of the entire land." I fixed it.
Yeah,
see that? You like that?
Yeah, you're like...
And every tree whose fruit contains seed, this will be food for you, for all the wildlife of the land, for every bird of the sky, and for every creature that crawls on the land, everything having the breath of life in it. I have given every green plant for food, and it was so. God saw all that he had made. It was very good indeed. Evening came, and then morning, the sixth day.
Mm-hmm.
So one thing that's neat about this is like the raw abundance is a bountiful creation. Could you imagine, say a lot of these folks who are receiving this story for the first time are coming out of slavery in Egypt. Moses is handing these stories to them, right? And they're coming out of slavery in Egypt in a desert. And they hear that this land
is bountiful.
Super bountiful.
Milk and honey, baby.
Milk and honey is what they end up talking about.
Yeah.
There's all the plants you can eat. It's everywhere.
Think about this in the context. Like when are these stories getting passed around the camp?
Yep.
Right? And we don't know for sure.
Yeah.
But I'm sure Moses was discipling them in this.
Yeah.
It's been written down. And frankly, this is where they think they're going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They totally do.
They think they're going here. Because when we get the directions in chapter 2, it is Canaan.
It's Canaan.
Yeah.
And man, we lose track of this. I started a garden this year, for the first time since I was a young kid.
Yeah.
And getting plants to grow is difficult. Like it's in some ways it's easy, but some ways, like I got half of my peppers are scarred and got this like white thing on them. They got sunburn.
They got sunburn.
And then they rotted because of that. It's hard.
Yeah.
Like getting food from the earth is hard work.
I've been gardening for 20 years.
Yeah, it's tough.
And if you take a break for a week, you're overrun with weeds.
It's over.
If you don't water in the heat of the Alabama sun, your tomatoes and your peppers can get burnt slap up in no time. Or they won't have enough calcium. You'll get blossom end rot.
Yep.
It's a constant.
Yep.
I had squash one day, and the next day they're all dead because of squash bugs. Mm-hmm. And so, you got to stay after it. And it's even worse in the desert.
Yeah, I imagine it being like we actually live in a wonderful place to grow food.
Wonderful.
Like it's hard, even harder there. And hearing like every green plant, grass, the tree leaves.
I know when he tells Adam and Eve they can eat of any tree in the garden.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Except for the tree of knowledge of good and evil.
Yep.
I always tell everybody, like, does that mean like every tree had fruit on it? Like you get lost in the woods in the Garden of Eden and you don't have to worry about starving.
Yeah.
You just eat any old tree, you don't even have to pack food.
Yeah. It's a land of bounty. Right. And that's, so the original, what we got at the beginning is a bountiful creation, humans given incredible dignity and privilege and status, set up for success, blessed by God.
Yeah.
God gave them their blessing, gave them every bit of energy they could ever need. They got all the fruit, they got all the plants they need, given one task to rule and to multiply. I guess that's two tasks.
Yeah.
And that's the setting for the narrative of the Bible.
Yeah.
Like God made it all. It's his. He put them in it to do these things.
In the land.
Right? In the land. Right? They're set up for success in the land.
What else could they need?
You don't need anything.
What could possibly go wrong?
What could go wrong, Brad?
What could go wrong?
We'll talk about that next week.
Oh, boy.
On the Big Deal podcast.
You got to ask me what the big deal is.
What's the big deal now?
Today?
Yeah, for today. Let's sum it up.
So the big deal of this creation story is don't get too wrapped up in how it works, how God created it. Mm-hmm. Don't get too wrapped up in that. But the really big deal of Genesis 1 is verse 26. No, well, the big deal is God creates everything, and therefore He owns it. He is the sovereign potentate.
Oh,
He's
potentate.
The king. He's the tyrant. He owns it.
Yep.
So God is the sovereign of this stuff. He made it all. It all belongs to Him, and He made it through His Word. And He put image bearers in it to enjoy Him.
Yep.
And all that He made. That was the point.
Share. Yep.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. That's the big deal. I don't know what we're going to call it. Maybe part 2, creation part 2 or something.
Yeah.
We'll figure that out. Thank you all so much for listening to the Big Deal Podcast. We're asking the question, big deal. What's the big deal about everything? And we're starting at the beginning. Next week, we're going to look at Genesis chapter 2, maybe get into chapter 3.
Yeah.
And this is setting up the whole shebang, man.
Yes. And look, if you have complaints or whatever, you can dial 555-STOP. That's what I'm just kidding. Come up here and yell at Justin at the church.
Yeah, just yell at me, man. I'll just sit there. I'm just going to sit there and I'll stare at you.
Yeah, just stare. Be like, I'll look through the little window in case it.
I'll say sorry about it.
Sorry, man. You don't read the Bible with me.
I'll say appreciate you.
Appreciate you.
All right. Thanks for listening, guys.
Yeah.
We'll see you next week.